What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Rick Podcast, Resilience in Chaos. Today, we are going to be talking with Mr. Garrett Wood. He is a certified hypnotherapist, and he reached out to me through email, and it's a topic that I'm super excited to talk about, Garrett. I think there's going to be some things we're going to answer that will be pretty cool. But let's go ahead and get into it. Let us know a little bit about who you are and what you do, where you're located, and kind of just about yourself. Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, Eric. I'm really excited to be here. It's pretty cool. I first came across your podcast because I had a couple clients that were struggling, and they're firefighters, and they're struggling with the show up and do all the right work and the emotional kind of work that takes place behind the scenes that doesn't always feel safe to share. And so it was really nice to be able to offer them a resource to hear a little bit more behind the scenes on your podcast. So thanks for doing the work you do, and I'm glad to be able to be participating with it now. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
a lot of people, but a lot of the people I work with, they're doing that emotional processing behind the scenes. They're stressed out. They're high performers, high achievers. One of their skill sets is being able to go when, someone says jump, they say, how high, I got you, and they're exceeding expectations. Just meeting expectations isn't enough for them typically. And they can do that for a really long time, and they've been able to do it by ignoring their own needs. And that is a skill. In a really short run, it's really successful. But when you take it out from that environment and expand it and you try to run your whole life like that, it comes with some serious costs. And when you've been turning that switch on for so long, it can be really challenging to remember how to turn it off. And some people don't even feel safe in that environment anymore, where they do have to slow down. And so that's kind of some of the work that I do with people. Hypnotherapy happens to be a really awesome tool for that, but it's definitely not the only one, but it's a really powerful one.
Yeah. Well, so where are you located at?
So I work in Southern California. I have an office in Long Beach and Irvine, but then I work with people remotely. So most of my work is virtual.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me that. I was like, how did you find us? Because we're definitely on the smaller level of podcasts there. And when you told me this story, I was like, that's pretty cool. And no better way for you to come on here. Now you can then tell some of your clients, hey, check out this podcast. We talked about some stuff, and then it's another resource for them as well.
Absolutely.
So here's a question that everybody actually Googled it or AI'd it. Can you be hypnotized without knowing it?
Yes.
Wait, what?
Yeah. That's
Am
the
I
short
getting
answer.
hypnotized right now?
No, not at all. I mean, maybe.
Let's talk about that.
So all hypnosis is self-hypnosis.
Okay.
So if you're going and seeing a hypnotherapist, they are creating an environment that helps you facilitate something in yourself.
Got it.
But they're not doing anything magical. They don't have any special powers. In my belief system, they're not connecting you to something else other than creating an environment where it makes it easier for you to be able to focus and then tune into yourself.
Yeah. It's more of a mindset shift is what you're talking about, getting into your subconscious. Because when I asked that question, can we be hypnotized against our will, or can we be hypnotized without knowing it? I think the deeper question is, how does it work? What is it?
Yeah. What is it?
Can it be trusted? Does it really work? Right? These are things we're going to dive into. That I know I've been wondering. Anyone that's listened to our podcast knows that I'm open with my life story. Sable, before she took her own life, she actually tried hypnotherapy. And I was kind of like, seriously? I kind of was like, really? Okay. So, this conversation is going to be great. So, we can, be hypnotized, with not without knowing it, but on ourself, I guess is what you're saying, of our thoughts.
Yep.
But what is it?
So
how does it work? Does it go into the subconscious? Is there a specific thinking pattern? How does it go? Let's dive in and let's see what we can talk about.
So I think most people's exposure to hypnotherapy is through a stage show of hypnosis, right? So there's a lot of corporate sponsored events where people show up and it's a big crowded room, or if you've gone to the county fair and there's a hypnotist on stage. And so, he or she, typically he, asks for volunteers from the crowd. Those people come up on stage. He gives a suggestion. Some people follow it. He dismisses a bunch of people. And then whoever's left is the nuts and bolts of a good, entertaining show. So there's no real hypnosis that he is doing on these people. In any group of people, let's say there's 100 people in that room, roughly 20-ish people out of that group of 100 are already in a state of hypnosis, because it is a natural state that we go through every single day. When you're waking up and going to sleep, you have to pass through a hypnotic state. If you're driving and if you've ever been driving and you get home safely, but you were not paying attention to anything and you don't recognize it until you arrived, that is a state of hypnosis. If you've laughed or cried at a movie and you know the actor's name in real life and even their dating history and the other 30 movies they've been in, but you laughed and cried in that moment in that movie, that's also a state of hypnosis. It's this like suspension of disbelief they talk about in fiction, where you know that it's Brad Pitt, you know that it's Angelina Jolie, but in this moment it's Mr. and Mrs. Smith and they're like having a shootout about some CIA thing and you're laughing and crying along with the movie. That suspension of belief is the different type of state of knowing you're entering into a hypnotic state. You're still driving your car and your mind's wandering somewhere else. That's a state of hypnosis. So it's in that hypnotist show, those 20 people that he gets on stage, they are outgoing, extroverted. They're not really shame-based people. They're excited to get up and be on stage. They're volunteering. The people that didn't raise their hand are never going to cluck like a chicken on stage. They're never going to dance like Christina Aguilera on stage because they're not that type of a person. So that's what the trick is that he's doing, is self-selecting for these extroverts on stage. And then out of those 20 people that come up, who are the 5 that are so in that state already that they're already open to doing something that they want to do? They're already have given up that state of disbelief and they're willfully participating. Now, they may not be like, oh, I'm so excited to act like a chicken consciously, but they're the type of person that doesn't bother them. They're like, that'd be cool. That whatever happens, happens. It's fine. And they happen to be in that state at that time. And so that's like what most people are seeing when they see like a hypnotist show. But the hypnotist isn't doing anything. They're just selecting the crowd to make sure it's a good show for everybody.
No, I get that. So Garrett, I've never been to one of those shows, but what you explained is what I think about, right?
Yeah.
And internally, I'm just kind of like, they're just following instructions. It's kind of what it seemed like. Yeah, that makes sense. They're outgoing. They like to be on stage. Me being a musician, like I don't like the show on me, but when I'm playing drums, I like to play for other people. I like to give people a show. So I think the mindset thing is kind of like whatever what I'm getting from you, maybe I'm completely wrong, but it's how willing are you to not so much be uncomfortable, but how willing are you to surrender to the experience?
100%. To be in that
what
moment.
It is?
To be present. Yep.
Yeah. So,
without judgment, without like self-flagellation, without like just focusing on anything else other than yourself. And athletes use this all the time. So a lot of inductions for hypnosis are rapid inductions, and you can train it in yourself. So if you're ever watching a basketball game and you see an athlete and they're at that free throw line and like crowd is roaring and like the clock is ticking and you can see the score, pressure's on, and you see them bounce that ball once, twice, look at the hoop, and before they release it, you see them bounce it again, see them a third time, and then it goes. That bouncing it twice for them is a hypnotic induction, where for them, they're able to just be 100% in that moment. Sometimes it doesn't quite work, so they have to go back and do it again. Because if they're paying attention to all of that stimulus, they're not going to be able to get that ball in the hole. It's something they've done millions of times, right? Like they just know how to do that. But there's so much things that can get in its way. For them, in that moment, that routine is an action to create an induction that focuses them in, tune everything else out, trigger almost that flow state, so they can just do what they know how to do best.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And right now I've got 2 bigger shows coming up, October 4th and 5th for a festival I'm playing. And awesome. I noticed that when I'm practicing or for a show, kind of like it's a visionary, right? So before I practice a song, I close my eyes. I imagine myself on stage playing the song, smiling, laughing, not stressing out, but really getting in tune with the music. Because when you come to a show or like a basketball player, you're there for a show, right? If it's a pro athlete, they have a job to do. Yeah, it's cool and everything, but for the athlete, it's like that is their job to make sure they're playing and winning, but yet to put on a show for the crowd. And that
For
takes
sure.
all that prep work. There's a lot of, I think what you're saying is like hypnotic moments or hypnotherapy in your own mind of,
Yeah.
being in the moment and being a visionary of how you want it to happen. And then the harder you practice that, that discipline you have, now that bouncing the ball a couple times, okay, you know what? Maybe that wasn't enough. Okay, I'm going to bounce it again. They close their eyes or whatever, or they get into that moment of like, imagine that ball going into the net, getting the thing, walking off, and I'm thinking that's what you're talking about, right?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
visualization and being able to like achieve it and feel it and believe it to be true inside of their body. That's that thing. I mean, it's the same thing with like Red Bull. In Long Beach one year, they had someone jumping over Rainbow Harbor. There's like a big lighthouse that's just like for show, but there's a nice big gap of water. They put two bridges out there and they had a guy in a little WRX ramp and jump over the harbor, right? He was supposed to do it at 12 o'clock to ring in the new year. So everyone's out on the docks drinking their champagne bottles and watching. And I felt bad for the crowd. I felt worse for him because I don't think it was until like an hour after 12 o'clock that he actually finally made the jump, because for that full hour, he was like driving up, hitting that ramp and rolling back down, driving up, hitting that ramp and rolling back down. And I just knew in my mind that he was sitting there going up to the top of the ramp and can I see this going well? Can I see this landing safely? And if he couldn't believe it to be true in that moment, he knew it's the smart, reliable, risk-averse thing to do to roll back down until you can actually do it. And like, kudos to him for spending an extra hour and a half from when he was supposed to do it till he was fully prepared to make that jump. But that is a form of hypnosis. And like, that is one of the processes of triggering a flow state. That deep, focused state is a hypnotic state.
So we'll get into how this can help first responders and burnout and stuff like that. That's going to be some of the main topics, but I think some of this conversation is really great because there's a lot of things that you said that if the listeners are paying attention to, there's a lot of key words. I feel like if you have self-doubt, which he probably had, right, that he had to believe is a word you used in himself to make sure he can then do the thing, whatever that thing is.
Yep.
So it's your internal belief system. So how do you, I feel like maybe, is that right? Like your belief system, you're surrendering?
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
So how
you have to be able to believe it to be able to see it, right? Because also if you see it but you don't believe it, that dissonance doesn't allow you to act with confidence either, right?
Yeah.
And if you can believe it in theory, but you can't see it in practice, there's a dissonance there. And then you really can't act well. So it's when those two come together that you can just be in that moment, that present, and let go and feel confident that it'll come out. I mean, that's a really high stakes version of it, right? Yeah. But almost every other action that we're taking when there's an expected outcome that we need to perform, there's a version of that happening.
Yeah. No, it's every decision we make every day. It could be getting married. It could be getting in a relationship. It could be, what job are you going to take? It could be, what are you going to eat? I get it. Every decision we make, there's going to be, good reward or a bad reward. Right. Yeah. And I totally understand that. As far as you said something about like a rapid state or something like that, like
rapid
therapy
induction.
or rapid induction. Yeah. What is that? Are there specific ways you as a certified hypnotherapist, like trying to help someone that is going to you for help, that's going through some kind of hard time or, because there's so many treatments out there, right? We know the SGB, then we have the CBT, then we've got the PE stuff as long as prolonged exposure there or PET. There's so many things out there, and how do people choose what to do? It's something we talked about part of the podcast. But how would you do this rapid induction, and why? What's the process of that? Like, how would that help? How do you do it? Like, explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So rapid induction into that deep focus state is just a trained response. That's all it is. So like when you tie your shoes, you don't have to think about it. It's a trained response. When you're learning how to tie your shoes, you're like, okay, so big, I don't know, everyone's got their different, like the rabbit, different version, this loop goes over that, and they have little like nursery rhymes to teach themselves how to tie their shoes. But once we know how to do it, we don't think about it anymore. It's just a response. The hard part is when stakes start getting higher, we start questioning our abilities to deliver that response. So the higher the risks are, the more we become aware of the negative outcome, the harder it is to trigger that procedural memory. So something you've done 1,000 times, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. And you're accessing a different part of your brain that doesn't have that access to that procedural memory. All of a sudden they're two separate parts. And that's when people start, like in sports, they call it the yips, right? Or choking. If we're on a fire, that looks different. If you're in a war zone, that looks different. And a lot of times people are getting trained so that way, no matter what's going on around them, they can perform as best as they possibly can because they don't have to engage another part of their mind. It's just there. It's just in their body. It's a somatic response. It's a learned thing. And any type of endeavor you do a lot of, like playing drums, I'm sure there's some songs that if I asked you, like if I handed you drumsticks, you would just automatically find yourself playing them, even without thinking about it. It's just like the same five songs over and over again. Someone like, and you're just like, and like, you're like, oh man, I'm doing that again. Even if you're in the car bored and you're not driving, I'm sure you're going to start drumming that same beat out on that type of procedural memory is what most people perform their best doing. They don't have to think about it. They're just responding. But when we start raising the stakes, the more we pay attention to that, the more anxious we get about the outcome, the harder it is to access that part of our procedural memory. And so that is where we get into trouble with performance. And so a rapid induction, the purpose of that is to be able to turn that part of our brain off or turn it down so that it makes it easier for us to access that ability to perform. So that's the typical best use case for like a rapid induction. It's not the only one for sure with hypnotherapy, but when we're talking about high performance, that is a really powerful tool for people. And so we take the skill that they know how to do, we imagine the thing that kind of triggers the insecurity or the anxiousness, and then we imagine a way for them to be able to actually make that transition. So for some people, it's like a touch sensor anchor, and that sensation associated with that state, you just build it together. And then no matter what, it brings that up. So it's kind of like a trained response. Like if you're trying to sell a house, they say bake cookies in the house. So when people come in for the open house, they're like, oh, this feels like home for me. It's that type of a triggered response. So some people, they use like smells, some people use touch, some people use words. Does not matter really. It's whatever's most salient for that person. And some people are more stimulated by sounds or motions than they are by sense or thoughts.
So it's not really a series of questions you're asking. You're basically trying to, what I'm getting from it, how it can help somebody is you're paying attention to how they respond to you. Maybe, I'm thinking maybe their eye contact, what kind of their emotional state I'm thinking, and you can help guide them and tap into, I'm thinking the subconscious is what I'm thinking. I don't know. So you can then like, not hijack, but like, yeah, I guess hijack some bad thinking that you are pre-programmed with to then let go of that disbelief or self-doubt or that thing that's scaring you or you're nervous about, to tap into something positive to where you're like, hey, let's focus on this more than this negative thing because really you're okay. Is that kind of like, is that kind of what you do? It's not just a series of questions, but it can be, like you said, it can be a moment, or it can be like a smell or a touch, whatever their thing is. And the more you pay attention to them, and you're going to take what is kind of working and then kind of not harness that, but harness that a bit more and then use that to their benefit. 100%. Is that kind of like what it is?
Yep, absolutely. You described it perfectly. Okay. And I think harness is a great word there. It's almost like ingrain that, because it becomes like a trigger for themselves. So people use the word trigger all the time. Oh, this scent, this sound, this environment triggers these negative belief sensations, ideas about myself, the world, and others. Well, we can do that same thing on purpose for positive associations too. And so it's interesting because like the more negative stuff, the easier it is to feel negative stuff. The more positive stuff, the easier it is to experience more positive stuff. And if you're well rested, well fed, not stressed, it's easier to experience more positive things. If you're not feeling great, no. The easier it is to feel negative things. So essentially, we're trying to make it easier to feel the good. So that way, when that guy's trying to do that jump, it's easier for him to see it. And so he has something that works for him that anchors in that positive feeling or tunes out those negative thoughts a little bit easier. And it's different for everybody, but it is a trained response, but it's not something I'm doing. It's something that I'm helping them develop. Just like if I was a personal trainer, I'm not doing push-ups for my clients. They have to be the one doing the push-ups and the squats, like, right? But designing the program so that it meets their goals is where the benefit comes in. Yeah.
No, it all makes sense, man. It's like, because I think when people will get more into how it can help burnout and stuff like that, but I think what I'm getting from this as well, it's like you kind of just like a support system. When people like stop believing in themselves, or they believe in themselves, but they're just stressed. Life has got them. You've got, this thing, that thing. You've got kids, you've got wife, you got girlfriends and boyfriends and job, and you're running this company and all these things, right? And then you just kind of get lost, and it seems like you need someone to kind of bring you back and be like, hey, let's focus on this, right? And let's support you, and let's get you to where you need to be, and let's kind of restart this. Because I feel like a lot of the times people have so much power within, they just kind of lost it for the moment. And when they tap back into that power, then they get that self-confidence back. Then they're able to accomplish or tackle things more, tackle them better, and not feel so stressed about everything not going right. Because I feel like when you're burnt out, or when you're, fight or flight, you have the PTSI and PTSD, and your brain is just like so overwhelmed, the littlest thing will stress you out. And you can think back a year ago or 2 years ago or three, however long that period is. You look back, you're like, I used to do so much. Or why is this stressing me out? This never used to stress me out. I'm not sleeping good. I'm not making these decisions like I should make the decisions. My words, maybe maybe time management's getting worse, but you're doing all the things. You're staying busy, right? But are you like just staying busy running in place? Right?
Yeah.
So how can, what are some things, you kind of talked about them a little bit, but how could it really benefit? A lot of our listeners are first responders, but we have so many, man, that listen to this podcast that just, I know when I was going through my darkest times, I just wanted support, someone to just listen, and someone to really just help guide me. And there's so much different stuff out there as far as, you got to do this and you got to do that. And, sometimes it can get overwhelming with, here we are, another podcast, right? Why am I paying attention to the Rick team? Why am I paying attention to, this hypnotherapist, Garrett Wood, But people are looking for information. People want to feel connection. People do want help. And that's why they're here. So how could, like, debunk, should people be scared about it? Is it something they're going to have to do like once a month, yearly? Is it something that you do to train them to help them overcome whatever that challenge is, and then now they have the tools? Is it like a coaching thing? Like, how does kind of all that kind of work as far as hypnotherapy and the coaching you do, and how could it benefit the other person?
Yeah. Lots of great questions in there. So I'll try to answer as
I know,
many
sorry.
as
I just gave you like 20 now.
So there's lots of different therapeutic interventions, and they all work. They don't all work for everybody, or they don't all work for everybody at that time, right? So wherever you are in what you need in that moment is a little bit different for everybody. So CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, really powerful tool, right? If you can be in a state where you can challenge your own thoughts, but to be able to be in that state, you have to be in a calm enough state where you have enough capacity to be using all of your faculties to both have an idea and challenge the idea. And I can do mental math, like 2 + 2 is 4. I know that in my mind, right? But it doesn't take very long for those numbers to get to the point where I need a pen and paper to write them down, or I need a calculator to be able to do that mental math. And it's the same thing with thoughts. It's the same thing with emotions. There's only so much we can process internally before they overwhelm our ability to cope. And the more intense those experiences are, and the more intense the emotions are in the moment, the more we need outside support to help us process that stuff. And then the longer we've had them for, the more challenging it is too, because we only have so much capacity day to day. So a lot of times with high performers, first responders, there is an expectation to perform at a very high level, and you don't have a lot of autonomy over it. You don't know when you're going to be called to do that. And you don't know how frequently you're going to be called to do it. And you don't always have all the resources you need to come down from that really high performance peak. And so the more time you're called out to do it and the less recovery you have, your window of performance gets smaller and smaller and smaller, or your ability to recover from that performance gets challenged. And so that's where you start feeling really irritated for no reason, really hard to get to sleep, or even if you have full sleep hours wise, you're not fully restored. You might notice, like I have, oh, I'm getting like kind of upset at the dog. My dog's behavior, it's a dog, but like I'm angry at the dog. Like,
Yeah.
that's a problem. Like something's going on there, right? And the more we kind of have a flavor of our emotions, the more we kind of know what our personal triggers are, the more acquainted we are with those like subconscious or limiting beliefs or insecurities, the easier it is to recognize them. But recognizing them and being able to, in the moment or after the fact, like, what would you call that? Like digest them? Like, so you're not getting indigestion from these experiences. If you're trying to do it all in your head, all by yourself, I don't think that's actually really possible for most people.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that in like a first responder setting, you kind of have a built-in community where if you're lucky enough to be able to share that community with people about this stuff and how it actually really affects you, it can be a really powerful tool. But if you're around people and it doesn't feel safe to share that part of yourself, it can also be even more challenging because you're like carrying it inside and not sharing it around. And that makes it even more intense, the isolation, alienation. So it can be tough. It can also be an asset. So finding the support team you need to be able to be that, I think is really powerful because you can't do it all in your own head. It is going to overwhelm your ability eventually for everybody. There's no like, the sun's hot. Like you're going to need sunscreen. There's not like, it's just math, right? Like,
Yeah. Dude, that's so true because this question pops up a lot. And I know I went through it as well. Do you really need therapy? Do you really need to go talk to somebody? Oh, I'm not going to go to that. You know, the term we hear a lot is I'm not going to go to that shrink, right? I'm not going to go talk to somebody about I'm emotionally stable. And it's like, oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Drinking all the time and this and that and working all the time and trying to really just, we'll talk about that too, like addictions, you know, that different people
yeah,
have. But when you are vulnerable with yourself, and you take action on those things, you know, and you might go to therapy, right? Just being vulnerable enough to be like, you know what, I'm going to go talk to somebody, or I'm going to go to, you know, because like what you said about CBT is 100% true. When you're in fight or flight, you're not comprehending what they're telling you. Well, I'm going to CBT, I'm going to hypnotherapist, or I'm, you know, or I'm going to
yep,
this doc, or I'm going to this support group. I've got my community, but
yep,
you're redlining so much that your body's like, nah, dude, you're about to crack. You're gonna break, right? And so you're not even comprehending, like you said, okay, 2 + 2 is 4. I got that. Okay, well now let's do like 102 times 1006. That's gonna take, you can't do that in your head. That's what you're trying to live with every day. Your brain's like, I can't comprehend this. You have to get a pen and paper out. Then you actually have to do the math. You have to write it, whatever you need to do. And I think the misconception of therapy or actually getting support or talking to somebody needs to just like be debunked. It's like you're just grabbing some help, right? You're getting some help because there's a quote I heard in a book I was reading, and it's like great things can't be accomplished alone.
yeah,
Right? You look at Kobe. Look at some of the best athletes. Were they all alone doing their stuff? No. They had a coach. They had someone watching their eating. And you hear these guys say, I don't need anybody. I'm good. I got this on myself. Oh, okay, cool. I guess like okay, awesome. You've got it handled. Copy that. Right? And
yep,
I think what you're talking about is like, you know, with that CBT or the hypnotherapy, like what you need to do is you need to get into that subconscious, and we need to really rewire that. I know we've talked about the stellate ganglion block before, some of the podcast, and you know, you're like not against it. And some of the things prior to the podcast, I'm like, man, if guys can start there because they're in so much fight or flight, now they come to someone like you, right? Now their nervous system is kind of brought down a little bit. And now as you're talking to them, they're actually present. They're more willing to surrender, to be like, hey, try this.
Yep.
Because prior, it's like, you might be like, hey, let's do this, right? Let's try, feel or smell, whatever your things might be, to just help them as a person. They may be like, okay, sure, whatever. What's this guy doing? Okay, trying this. Come on. They're not even there. They're not even accepting the help that's right in front of them. And the reason I say that, because that was me.
Yeah.
Right. And as I hear you talk, anyone that's listening, it's like, surrender to where you're at, go get the help and do what you need to do, and talk to someone like Garrett, or go do what you need to do, because there's so many treatments out there. And you've said this before, it's like, not one thing works the same for everybody. Right. And that's why I like to have you on, because it's like, here's another treatment or path that I never thought about until you reached out to me. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's see what conversation we can have, and let's see who connects with it, because someone might be like, yeah, I'm going to go email Garrett, or I'm going to go check this out. He's local, we'll try it out. Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm a big fan of the GSB. I think it's a pretty cool intervention, because it seems to work. We're talking about nervous system regulation, right?
Yeah.
Fight, flight, or freeze, fawn, flock, whatever, all the different responses that our nervous system has. And those are adaptive responses to the environment, and to protect us, to keep us safe, to survive to the next moment. And those are all good things. It's just when we have to really hit that nail every single time without enough recovery. And I think we focus a lot on performance, and there's this myth out there that emotions and reasons are separate processes. And we have this like nice long history in Western traditions of like logic and reason and willpower is what separates us from animals. Animals are bestial and instinctual, and if we have this logic and reason, that's the thing that separates us. So the more of that logic, reason, willpower, the more stoic we are, the less emotional our responses are, the more godlike we're being, the more idealistic we're being. And I'm not saying that's false, but I am saying that like there are people that cannot feel emotions. And if you ask them if they want to come in on like a Tuesday or a Thursday, they're like, I don't know. And they're literally running through all of the different inputs about traffic and what the weather's going to be like. And there's nothing that makes them make a decision or an action. If you're devoid of emotion, you actually can't reason well. And in fact, when we do like really big, deep reasoning problems, we're looking like, is it A or B? When that emotional piece shows up, that's what actually triggers the response for us to take action and continue to take action. And it's usually based upon our values. So this idea of separating emotions and reason from each other is like probably outdated. The physiology and the neuroscience doesn't show that. But if all we're doing is stuck in that fight, flight, freeze, we can't change our behaviors or actions. We can just do the next thing that we already know how to do. We can't choose to do something different. So we have to be able to get out of that state first before we can do anything. And so whatever that is to get out of that state is a win, which I think is why a lot of people are reaching for alcohol, because it is a nervous system depressant. It actually lowers that state. Now, it's literal poison for your body, and it's going to get you hungover, and it's not going to affect your ability to sleep. But I bartended for 13 years, and I would see these gentlemen come in, right? And they would share their sob stories. There's one guy who really loved his wife. It was the love of his life. It was like his entire identity was built in being a loving husband. And he lost his life to cancer. And he had been mourning her loss every night with 7 to 8 beers and then a few shots. And he would be sobbing. Not just alone, he'd be with people sobbing, processing this emotional trauma. But the next day he'd wake up hungover, and he had blacked out. And so he wouldn't actually have done any of that emotional trauma. Like the processing never updated in his nervous system, in his mind, his neuroplasticity. So he had to go and do it again. So it was literally like he was stuck in Groundhog's Day, mourning her death every day for 16 years. And he couldn't, in his sober state, access those emotions because it didn't feel safe for him because they were so overwhelming. So he'd have a few drinks and then he'd be able to access them. He'd have a few more and he'd be able to get away from them enough for a moment to take a break. But that actually wasn't therapeutic because he didn't get to keep those insights the next day, because alcohol doesn't let you sleep. It doesn't let your brain do the processing. You got to process all the liver alcohol stuff out. So because of that, he was stuck in that purgatory. It's like really tragic.
I think that's what a lot do, man. You know, I think that's everyone's go-to to just escape, to not actually have to process that. And that brings up, and there's so much you said, but the emotional state, because I think firemen, or you know, because that's a lot who listen to this, you know, firemen and veterans and whatnot. But anyone that is trying to become better, I feel is you know, us as humans, we're very resilient people if we tap into that. And and I will just use firemen and veterans, whatnot, in particular, or high profile clients, whatever, that are trying to strive for a little bit more, right? There's meant to be leaders, and then there's meant to be the followers, right? Everyone has their place. That's not to demean anybody. But when you are more of a leadership role, or you take more of like a high stakes job, or something that requires a lot more than just, okay, I'm going to come just clock in and clock out. You actually have to be engaged. It's going to create a lot more stress. And I feel like the resilience of first responders, we're just used to that, or like athletes or whatnot. They're just used to those high stress environments. So do you see with any of your clients, as far as like, you could be resilient, but maybe you have a hard time, the emotional side is very hard to tap into, like no connection with people, maybe hard to have conversations, or you're short fused, you're stressed a lot, even though you're a resilient person, right? You go to the next thing and you got to stay busy. But when it comes to like human interaction and actually being emotionally stable, maybe whether it's in a relationship, or with, you know, with your kids or with friends or whatever, like, what do you see? Is that making sense?
Absolutely.
Like the question I'm asking, like, because sometimes I see that all over the board, have really, you know, resilient workmates and whatnot. But then it's like, man, sometimes I'm just like, are you here? You know? So
Are you even here? Are you present in your own life? Yeah.
You know, and so what are some addictions that you've seen, or, you know, let's just talk about that for a little bit. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So I think what I heard there is like, the resiliency is a measure of their ability to continue to perform regardless of the stressors that they've seen. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'm in a high stress situation. I see some high stress stuff, but it doesn't stop me from being able to show up and do the same job the next day. My performance doesn't suffer regardless of the stress. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Except for that's like an incomplete definition of resilience, because it still comes at a cost. What is the hidden cost? Right? So there are a lot of people that leave the position because after 5 years of that, 6 years of that, 10 years of that, they can't continue to be resilient because they didn't get the support they needed while they were there. And so eventually they can't continue to perform. So the reason why I actually opened my clinic is I worked with a guy. It's a nice like corporate big job, lots of people to be in charge of, lots of things going on. But we worked with some executives and some like people that had resources, and they chose to spend it on their health and wellness with the organization was at. It was long hours, a lot of people, a lot of personalities, and it was a pretty like competitive environment where we're like really driven by P&Ls. So we had like a score sheet every day, like how well is your team doing relative to budget? And you'd look at that sometimes every like 3 hours. Like it was pretty like competitive environment. It was great. It was fun. I had a good time doing it. You could see your efforts have an impact in the people that we serve, but also on the bottom line. And you had really nice numbers to see that with. So it was like, okay, do we do this? We get this result. We do this, we get this result. And so if you're a competitive person, you could go all in on that because there's a lot to play with there. Mm-hmm. And if you care and you're excited and you're interested and your values are aligned with that position, that's actually really dangerous sometimes for people, because then that becomes their sole focus. We're talking about addiction to like alcohol, but it could be addiction to that performance as well. And addiction isn't necessarily like this is a good behavior or bad behavior. It's, does this behavior serve you, and does it cost you? And is that balance appropriate? 1 or 2 beers, sure. You know, hey, I'm not going to say 1 or 2, I don't even know how people consume heroin, but I'm not going to say that that's probably an okay thing. But, you know, less heroin is always a step in the right direction, I guess, right? But for some people, like the idea of like even running a marathon, that can be their way of like coping with their stuff. I've done that. I was a former runner, like long distance runner, but that was my way of coping. But I ran so much that I tore my meniscus, some stress fracture, but I actually ran so much that I tore my vas deferens. And so when I would urinate or ejaculate, I would have blood in my urine and my ejaculate. And I would go to the doctor. I was like, whoa, what is going on? And they're like, so you either have,
Wow.
I was 23 at the time. They're like, you either have cancer or you got like trauma to your genitals. And I was like, well, there's been no trauma. So let's check for all the cancers, please. But it was just too much running. It was just too much for that part of my vas deferens to take that much micro trauma of one step after another. And I wasn't even that good of a runner. So, but
Maybe that's why, dude. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, probably my form technique, you know, lots of
Yeah.
room for improvement there. But
No.
that was my release. But was it healthy? Obviously not, right? So
Yeah.
the certain point is like, if you just have one intervention to help support you, you're going to meet the ends of it, right? Like it's going to come to the point where you meet diminishing returns. If it's alcohol, it's probably a few drinks before you reach diminishing returns. If it's running, it might be a few miles, a few hundred miles. There are some things that are definitely a steeper curve of diminishing returns than others. Heroin's probably one of them. Reading,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's probably a pretty like low slope to that diminishing returns. So we could talk about having better, healthier alternatives where it's a longer way before you reach that diminishing returns. But that's like only one side of the equation. The other side was like, how intense is this? How well is your recovery process? Those are all like general interventions. They're not very specific ones. And so we can get really specific with our interventions. Hey, when I'm in this environment with this type of a person, this thing happens to me. And you're like, oh, okay, let's work on that. Because if we solve for that, we don't need all these extra general things. Maybe instead of 5 beers, you can have two. Maybe
Yeah.
instead of two, you could have zero. Maybe instead of having to run 100 miles a week, you can get away with 5 and still feel the same way. If we have really general interventions, we're going to get general results. I mean, you know, if you got low back pain and you're taking Tylenol, Advil, you're like, okay, I guess. Like, it would be nice if you could just take that and put it right where it hurts and it'd be more effective. It's kind of that same idea when it comes to the mental, emotional, and like PTSD type of experiences that people have gone through. How specific can we get with our intervention? But those interventions only work if you already can access the relaxed state. Because if you're so stressed you can't get there, it doesn't matter what the intervention is. We got to get out of that state first before you can put anything to work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, man. I think you can tell when someone's talking to you, like, are they looking at you in the eyes? Are they paying attention? Um, you can just see it, right? And with social media and with the world and with what's going on, so many people are disconnected right now. It's like, if you're not this side, if you're not that side, if you're not doing this, if you're not doing that, there's so much disconnection. And then there's so much stress in the world, right?
Sure.
With whether it's money or whether it's relationships or whether it's politics or whether it's whatever. And then, there's so many things going on. So how do people even harness that? Right. I have my ideas of it, right? And that's this podcast, Resilience in Chaos. But what do you think? What's something somebody can maybe even possibly do on their own, like right now? Like
Yeah.
the thought process, or if they're driving in a car right now, or they're at home, or they're in the bed, they're trying to, whatever it might be. Okay, well, cool, guys, you guys are yapping here for the last 45 minutes, but what can I do? Right?
Yeah.
What's something I could do to maybe help rewire the brain or something like that, and a thought or a question or something. Like, what are some things you've noticed that have helped other people? I know it's not one thing for everybody, but maybe a common denominator.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the people I work with, they're pretty cerebral. They're pretty in their head, right? They're really good at thinking. I would call them cognitive athletes.
Yeah.
Like they've had thoughts about the thoughts about the thoughts about the thoughts to the point where like they're distracted by those thoughts. They're not actually helping them anymore. So sometimes challenging those thoughts isn't helpful because they're already doing that and like they're lost in it. And so sometimes the reason why people reach for a substance is because it is a body-based intervention. It intervenes directly on their nervous system. The GSB is an example. It intervenes directly on your nervous system, right?
Yeah,
So
the
it takes
SUV,
you out
yeah.
of that state. Yeah, SJV. So the idea would be, can we give them something that costs them nothing, right? There's no diminishing returns. The more of it you do, there's no bad to it. Is it really easy to access no matter where you are, driving, in a moment, in front of someone, mid-fight, mid-spreadsheet, mid-whatever the thing is stressing you out? Can you access it right there in that moment? And then is it effective? And so those are kind of the things that I'm looking for. Is it practical? Can you implement it in the moment? What is the downside of implementing it? If you do a ton of it, is it bad for you or good for you, right? And so some
Yeah.
of that stuff comes out to be somatic or body-based interventions. And so a lot of that, people have talked about breath work before. I think that's a pretty powerful one.
Hmm.
But sometimes it can be touch too, because some people don't respond to the breath. And so you have that nervous system for the vagus nerve, stimulating, non-stimulating, so it makes it easier to regulate, but you can do that differently too. So there's a couple areas that you can actually put pressure on your body that creates a nervous system response through the vagus nerve. So if we're in the athletic training room and you're trying to stretch your hamstrings a little bit, sometimes the athletic trainer will put your leg up on their shoulder and they'll push into you and they'll be like, hey, push back onto me. And you'll push and there'll be like a little tug of war and then everyone relaxes and then you can drift deeper into it, right? So that's called a PNF, or proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. It's just a fancy ass name for a tug of war of your nervous system and the perception of what tension feels like. But that shows up on almost every part of our body. And so we can do that differently, not just for muscle tension, but we can actually do it for the tension in our nervous system. So my favorite one is really easy. You kind of take your fingers and you put them up underneath your ribs. So if you go down your
Hmm.
sternum all the way to the edge, and between your belly button and your sternum, there's a few inches in there. If you go
Hmm.
out to the side of your belly button and you push up and underneath your ribs gently, not pokey, not with force, but gently, and you hold it there and you just hold them there and you take some deep breaths in. When you breathe in, if you don't let your fingers move and then you exhale and you let them sink deeper, if we do that 4 or 5 times, I'm doing it as I'm talking right now,
So am I.
right?
I'm trying it out, man.
Yeah. Don't do this while you're driving because you need both hands to drive, but even if that, if you're doing that before and after you get in the car, transitioning from one errand to the next, right? From one task to the next, 5 breaths like that with that tension, we're doing the same thing to that hamstring that we're doing for the diaphragm, which is where that vagus nerve innervates at. And our ability to take a long, slow, deep inhale and an even longer, slower, deeper exhale is about the tension that the diaphragm feels. So if we can create that relaxed diaphragm, we can allow that vagus nerve to move, we can open up that breath, and it sends that somatic signal to the brain whatever is here or whatever I'm thinking about isn't as intense as I think it is, as I believe it to be. I can be calm and access a relaxed state
Hmm.
even though nothing else has changed, even though the world hasn't changed, even though the politics haven't changed, even though my boss is still a jerk, even though my relationship
Yeah.
is still challenging, even though I'm still a jerk, right?
No, never. We're talking about. No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
But once you're in that state, then you can actually do something. And what's really cool about that state is that in of itself is actually therapeutic.
Yeah. And you answered it. That's it's I like how you said you're putting the touch with the breath work. Because maybe does that maybe slow down some overthinking as well, because there's a lot I know that try to do meditation. I meditate or
Yeah.
slow my breath work. I try to do it every morning, maybe while I'm stretching or something, because I've noticed for myself, if I'm doing stretches with breath work, that calms me down a little bit easier than
Hmm.
just sitting there and all humdity out, right?
Mm, yeah.
But I noticed, depending on the day,
Hmm.
I need that. I need
Yeah.
to not do anything else, because I'm like, okay, I have to do 2 or 3 things at once right now to slow down. That's
Yeah.
my internal uh, gauge of okay, dude, you need to calm down. You tell your brain what to do. It don't control you. You
Sure.
control it. Tell it
Right.
to shut the heck up, slow down. I control you right now.
Yeah.
And this might sound stupid to people, but this is stuff I've learned the past few years, because my brain used to control me. So I think what you're talking about with putting the hands below, um, that's just another way of feel. I dig it. I'm going to try. I'm going to practice it, of maybe just feeling. Now you're putting the touch with yourself, and
Mhm.
then having your breath work. And you're kind of focusing. Your goal isn't to focus on a couple things. It's to focus on one thing. But by putting that touch, it helps you focus better. Is that what you're saying?
So with the touch there, because you're holding that tension on the
Uh-huh.
diaphragm, it's a muscle, right? So it's just like doing the stretch of the hamstrings. It's doing a PNF on the hamstrings. And so if you try to take deep breaths and you're so stressed out you can't, it's typically because that diaphragm, you're carrying so much extra tension in your body that it doesn't feel safe to relax.
Got
And
it.
so you can't actually relax. And so that's when people typically reach for something like alcohol because it relaxes you for you, right? We can send that same signal to the nervous system. If we're putting that PNF into that diaphragm, it's actually creating a more tissue extensibility, making it easier to stretch, which makes it easier to take the breath because of
Got it.
that
Okay.
tension that we're putting there. And so it like overrides, it's like a manual override of the software code. It's like, nope, we're taking this thing out, we're putting it back in. It's not quite like turning it on and off again, right? Like they tell you with every electronic. That would be nice, but it's as close to that as you can get no matter where you are, who you're with, or what you're doing, because it's such a simple intervention.
Yeah.
And because it's therapeutic to be in a relaxed state around stressors, it actually desensitizes you to the intensity of some of those stressors because it downregulates your nervous system. So if you're thinking about something that stresses you out and you're doing that and you can't help your mind wandering to it, if
Yeah.
you can actually stay in that relaxed state and think about the distressing thought, it's less distressing the next time you think about it. It's easier to stay relaxed even though nothing has changed.
So is it a one and done?
No,
I
it's
asked it on
reps.
purpose, right? It's
It's
reps,
reps.
right?
It's reps. It's reps.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
because slowing down is hard.
Oh man, I'm
You
bad
can
at
be
it.
great one day, and then you're like, man, my routine yesterday, I did this, I did that, I got the cold plunge in, I got the sauna, I did, the
Yep.
work got done for the day, but then this one thing takes it off, and the next day you're like, I just did good yesterday. I was able to be in the moment. Now today it's like this person pissed me off, or this, that, or the other thing, or whatever. So it's like, it's that discipline, right? And what have you seen? What I've seen, I'm going to see if we agree on that. Um, it typically isn't the big things that
Mm-hmm.
make the most change. It's these small little daily things over time with the patience and grace on yourself to actually
Yeah.
stay consistent that create the big change. Because you'll see like people go on a diet, right? Oh, I'm on this diet, I'm working out, I'm doing the thing for a month or two, and then 3 months they're done. It's like, well, you just burnt yourself out. Like, just start slow, take that baby step, right? Do something consistent on a daily basis
Yep.
to where you are giving yourself that internal confidence of like, I'm gonna do this no matter what, because this is my internal peace. If it's emotional that you're trying to connect with, maybe that's your hard thing, because people talk about hard things all the time, and they can put it to running like you're
Yep.
talking about, or they put it to the gym, or they put it to doing something so crazy outlandish. It's like, well, that's cool, right? Everybody has their journey, but maybe your hard thing is just sitting with your thoughts and putting your hands underneath your rib and taking 5 breaths in to slow the heck down.
Yep.
Maybe that's your
Absolutely.
hard thing on a consistent basis, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
So my favorite idea about this is like a root canal versus, you know, how many minutes of your day is spent on like teeth maintenance, right? I mean, these are special bones in your body, right? They're not
Mm-hmm.
covered by insurance for some reason. You got to pay extra supplemental insurance because those are
Yeah.
your fancy bones. Uh,
Yeah.
but most people brush their teeth once every 72 hours at least. Some people floss. Some people brush their teeth more. Some people, brush their teeth after every meal. But it's not a big thing. We don't glamorize it. We don't have like Instagram accounts where we're watching people floss their teeth and like flex how nice their gums are. Like everyone's got a nice smile. We appreciate that, right? But it's not this fetishized thing because it's just so normal and natural that we don't even think about it because it's just a part of like what you do throughout the day. It's like blowing your nose. It's like wiping your butt. You don't think about it. It's just a part of your day. But I think this idea of how simple and easy and effortless that is, that it's not this like heroic intervention, If you choose not to do that stuff, you're more likely to have to get a root canal. And that then becomes like a 3-week process and like thousands of dollars and a lot of pain and like medication. I was talking to a breathwork facilitator the other day. He does like the Wim Hof stuff. He takes people on retreats. And he does his breath work like 4 times a day, just like part of his day, just like some other people brush their teeth 4 times a day. Because he's like deep in on it. He's been deep in on it for 20 years. He loves the stuff. He like, you can't talk to him at a grocery store without being like, have you heard about the power of breath work? Right? Like he's so in on it.
I get it, dude. Okay, bro. I got you. No,
I got you. Okay. Can we talk about something else? Like, and that's like, but he's so in it because he sees the benefit of it. But he takes these people on the retreats, and some people are like having psychotic, like close to a psychotic break. Like he actually has people there to help support him through that process in case that would happen, because it's such a powerful tool for some people. But some of these people are processing decades of unprocessed trauma. And for him, he's just relaxing and enjoying himself. It's just like all sunshine and rainbows when he gets into that state, because it's not a root canal for the man. He's been digesting every little frustration every day, 4 times a day. No big deal. And he never needs that root canal, that reset of all that trauma and unprocessed stuff, because he's not thinking that I have to man up and do this all by myself alone with my own thoughts and my own feelings and my own insecurities and my own. He was like, no, man, it's tough. Like life is tough for everybody. Yeah. And like we need to have resources that are easy, accessible, and don't have diminishing returns that are specific and intervention in that moment. For him, it's breath work. Good for him. But I do think that that idea is really fascinating. And you mentioned like, man, I was so good yesterday, and then this one little thing happened and now it threw me off. To me, that's like clues. That's your nervous system leaving clues. Like whatever that thing was, what was that thing? And who cares why it's there and what led to it? But it's like, oh, that's the next piece that I need to, that's the sore spot in my mouth that needs more attention. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. And I think you picked up on that. And that's where that like meditation or breath work comes in, because when you feel that little pain, you're like, you know what, I'm going to have to sit with that. Right. And if because everyone's busy, right? Something's going on. And you don't even really have time to sit with yourself, then sit alone to work on a relationship, then sit alone to be maybe a better leader, right? Then to sit alone to like just be a better father or whatever it might be, because things just get so busy, right? So it's like what typically happens? You have all these things going on, job or family, and then you never even take care of yourself, right? Yep. And I hear that a lot. It's like, oh, I'm just too busy. I can't do this. I can't do that. It's like, you don't care about yourself? Right. Well, I got this. I got that. It's like, oh, I get it. Everybody does. Right. But it's like, if you don't take care of yourself, maybe it's 1 minute. Maybe it's while you're in the shower. Maybe it's while you're driving. Like, figure it out. Yep. That's what being resilient is. Maybe you can't sit in front of the TV or sit, on the whatever you think you can do, because life is busy. Maybe it's getting up 5 minutes earlier, or maybe it's why everyone goes to the bathroom, right? Maybe while you're going to the bathroom, don't open your phone and look at emails. Don't scroll. Maybe that's your little time to, I'm just going to sit here and just do some breath work while I'm here. Now you're getting 2 things done at once. Like, figure it out. Right. Whatever that is for you. It's like, I got into breath work, and I thought a lot of the stuff we're talking about, man, was this hocus pocus, wazoo. Like, if you'd have talked to me, I say this all the time, a few years ago, I'd have been like, okay, this stuff is dumb. Like, what are these guys talking about? Like, I wouldn't, dude. Right. But it took me to go have that surgery, right? Get that root canal in my own personal life with job and, my personal stuff that happened. Everything came together and it all crashed. And it's like, okay, no, I can no longer just power through, right? Because your body's like, no, bro, you're done. Like, you can't just power through and just work more. You can't power through and just go from relationship to relationship. You just can't power through and just do more. It's like your body's like, no, you're gonna be done right now, and you're gonna deal with your thoughts. You're no longer gonna run away, and you're gonna deal with them. Yep. And I don't wish that upon anybody. And that's why we talk about these things, because if you have those small little disciplines every day, a minute or 2 minutes of mindfulness. I know that sounds so like woo-woo. Okay, what are these just mindfulness BS, right? No, I mean it. I mean it, guys. Like, really just spend with your thoughts and spend some time with your thoughts and, deal with it. deal with whatever it is we need to deal with, go get help. Talk to someone like you, like Garrett, right? Go wherever you feel comfortable to be able to deal with yourself. That's what I think, what we're trying to say here,
Yep.
and right, someone being a runner. Look, you ran so much because that was your coping mechanism, but maybe to everybody else, that's healthy, right? Shane and I have talked about this on podcasts. It's like you can try to work out so much, and it's like, but then your diminishing returns are just your nervous system gets shot, your digestive system, all of these things. Your sleep is bad, everything else is suffering, but you're doing the thing. You're getting up, you're going to the gym, right? But your body's like, no, dude, that's good, but you need to
Yeah.
actually chill,
Yeah.
right? And how hard is that for a high achiever or for someone that is a go-getter to just
Yep.
chill and
Yep.
do nothing?
Yep.
That might be their hard thing.
That is
And
the hard thing for a lot of people. Yeah.
yeah, right? Because I know it was for me, because it's like I'm wasting time.
Mm.
Am I going to go talk to someone? No, that's a waste of time. I'll just deal with it on my own, right?
Yep.
But eventually that 2 + 2 gets a lot harder, and those things ramp up, and you can no longer deal with it on your own,
Yep.
right? Or you can no longer cover it up with the thing, whatever that thing is that you're saying it's not the thing, but it is
Right.
the thing, right? Being real with yourself and being like, you know what? I do have an issue with this. And that's hard. That is very hard to be like, you know what? Yeah, I am a hard worker. Yeah, I am a resilient person. Yeah, I go and say I'm going to accomplish what I'm going to accomplish. But sometimes maybe that's the thing that's kind of stopping some of the internal personal growth versus external growth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I think a lot of organizations benefit from these individuals. That's why they recruit them. That's why they attract them. That's why they tell the heroic stories about these people. And the hard part is like there's only so much of that you have in your system. Robert Slapsky, he's a professor over at Stanford. He studies anthropology and neuroscience, right? So he's like hanging out with monkeys and seeing all their like hierarchies and structures of these systems. And then he's also studying the stress in the nervous system and how it shows up in your brain. He's got a ton of books out there, but one of my favorites, it's like a fun one. The title is Why Don't Zebras Get Ulcers? And they don't. And it's not that they don't have stressful lives. They run from a lion and then they're done. And that's it. But for us, if you're out there, the line never stops because it's in your own mind. It's in your own perception. It's the bills that you always have to pay. It's the expectations to continue to perform at work. And if you're a high performer and your reputation depends on that, and that's your identity, and there's no break from your identity with your performance, there's no wiggle room in there, you can't have a bad day. So you have to do whatever it takes to show up. And sometimes the cost of that eventually takes its toll. The organization, the team continues on, even though now you're broken, you're beat up, and you're burned out. And you can only do that so many times in your lifetime before you get an ulcer, before it shows up in a medical condition. And so it's really a long-term strategy for a healthy, full life, but it's really hard to weigh that against the pros and cons of being here and now with the performance piece, especially if your identity is tied to that outcome. That's where I think people really get in danger, and specifically people that are resilient in chaos, that are high performers, that are dedicated to it, and they have the right values. That's actually what's the most dangerous for those people, because they care. If they didn't care, it wouldn't matter, right? Yep. So it's tough that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You said that right on. Because that does get dangerous for sure. And that's where other things become more important than sometimes the simplest things of like yourself and your family. You know, that's typically what suffers the most, I feel like, is yourself and your family. But you're performing on the other stuff. You're doing great for the company. That company is going to go on with or without you. It will. That job is going to get done with or without you. We are all replaceable. And that's what's helped me is like, you know what? Not being lackadaisical, but when you're in something, do your best job, right? Do your best work. But understand that it's like, whether you're here or not, someone's going to do it. But when I'm here, I'm going to do it well. Cool. Awesome. right? I'm still going to be a high achiever. I'm going to get things done. I'm going to do what needs to be done. But the world does not need to fall on your shoulders. Like, it doesn't.
Yep.
It's not worth it, because like you said, you're going to get an ulcer, maybe alcohol or porn addiction or, drugs or whatever the thing is,
Yep.
right? It's not worth it, man. It's not worth it. And, you see a lot of these more than I do, because I'm not, any clinician or in anything like that, but all the people that reach out to us on the podcast, the stories are all the same.
Yeah.
Right. I was one of them. That was
Yep.
me. Right. That was me.
Yeah.
When other things suffer, you can have a lot of shame and guilt from it, and so I think what we're talking about with those small little daily disciplines of, like, the root canal, or don't go to the root canal, let's figure these things out, right?
Yeah.
Just take those small daily steps, right? You don't need to be pissing out blood, right?
Right.
It's real things, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that people are probably like, man, is that what's happening to me right now? Whatever the thing is for them, your nervous system's probably telling you something. You're just not paying attention to it. Right.
Yep.
So it's like, pay attention to that stuff. Go talk to someone, reach out to Garrett, reach out to a therapist or whatever you need to do, and connect with someone.
Yep.
Because
Absolutely.
Our main goal is, like, I hear you, Garrett hears you. You have plenty of clients, right? And you don't need to be doing it alone.
No. Yeah. There's this analogy I like to think of, like, when groups are doing well, like teams are doing well, to perform well, you're able to step back when you need that break and the work can still get done. That's when it's at its best, right? Like in a choir, you're a musician, like in a choir, they have so many people up there. They can do this crazy sustained long note that not one person could do by themselves, because when someone runs out of air, they can step back and take that breath for themselves and be ready to come back in and then start again. And the note continues to be sustained, because as everybody needs that break, they all drop off one by one, but there's enough people there to actually take that load and carry and sustain that work. When a team's doing really well, it allows for that to happen. If that isn't able to be accessed on that team, that's where we get in trouble. Where you feel like, man, I can't show up or the work's not going to get done. I can't take a step back even though I need it. Otherwise, it's not going to be okay, either for your family or for the work. That is a troubling situation. We don't always have control over that, budget cuts and like bills and, stuff at home. But that shows even more importance of like all these little things to be able to make it accessible to do something in the day to day just to break even, let alone try to get ahead or make it easier. Because you're going to do it anyway, whether you said, whether it's like pulling up a porn site or cracking a beer, it's going to happen. So you might as well be making it something that has less diminishing returns. But that's actually why I opened the clinic. I was in that corporate setting. I was burning out. It was bad. It was unhealthy. That's how I got into hypnotherapy. I found out that non-sleep deep rest, 3 minutes of that is like taking a 20-minute nap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep,
the easiest way to get in there is through a hypnotic state. So I was like, oh, what's this all about? And that's like kind of what piqued my interest, was that piece, just to try to get a nice little break in my nervous system. But as I was going through that, there was a guy that we all looked up to in the organization. He'd been with the company for 20 years out of a 25-year company, and he got let go. Pretty surprisingly, shocking to him and his family. And after 2 weeks, I was sitting in a meeting with his replacement, and we all got word that he had taken his own life, because he had given so much of himself to that organization for so long that without that title, there wasn't enough left in his own life without it that didn't involve that organization, that title, that position, that it wasn't worth living anymore for him. And then the company replaced him in 2 weeks. I mean, it's like that to me was like, one, burnout, the cost of it, two, the identity piece, and then like, what are you doing all that for, right? Like, who's going to benefit from that in the long run, and at what cost to yourself and others? Sometimes it's easy to think about your family, but sometimes like that is even a scapegoat, because if you're not taking care of yourself, your family's not going to be doing okay either. You're going to be a jerk in your own family. Unfortunately, that, when I started working with a hypnotherapist as a client, receiving that treatment, our performance went up, my health went up, my relationships went up. I was less angry at the dog. My gains in the gym were better. My back pain went away. I was working out less and getting more results. I was working less effort at work and I was getting more results. I was like, oh man, I was kind of an asshole. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to be, but I was, right? Um, and so it's worth looking into. There's nothing to lose and only things to gain.
Yeah. No, dude, I agree. And it's hard to, our my goal and the vision of this podcast isn't to tell people what to do, right?
Right.
Like you're talking about, like there's nothing to lose but more to gain. Until you are vulnerable with yourself and you make that decision, I feel like, because you something happened to you with a boss, or not didn't
Yeah.
happen to you, but it happened around you.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, this is how it rocks. Like, yeah, that's the reality of it. You're going to get replaced. Like I said, we are all replaceable. Right. And, you, whatever the thing is for you, it took that you were getting burnout, you were seeing things going on and you're like, hey, I'm going to go get some help. And it seems like, I know nothing's ever just straight up, but you have those ups and downs, but your journey started of
Yep.
like, I'm going to take care of Garrett. I'm going to take care of me because you know why? The better I show up for myself, the better I show up for the world. And it's crazy how when you do that switch, you're like, I was working this hard and I was always annoyed and pissed at people and lacked patience because it wasn't them, it was me. I was the one that needed to do the internal work. The one saying, well, if I'm not there, it's not going to get done. Am I saying sometimes is that the case? Yes, of course, right?
Of course.
I get that. I'm not saying that's never not the truth. There are times where, yes, if you're not there, it's not going to get done. So you got to stink and be there. I get that. But when that becomes the routine and your life, something I feel like needs to change.
Yep.
Right. But NSDR, dude, that's rad. Shane and I actually did talk about NSDR. I think like a year ago on a podcast because I came across it with Andrew Huberman.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, yeah, that would make sense to me. That's like a state of hypnosis where, he has you lie down. I do his 10-minute one.
Oh, nice.
And he talks about, just laying down and envisioning your body relaxed and then, your ankles and your head and all that stuff, right? It's trying to get you into that. I feel like a trance state of just relaxation. And then, the 3 deep breaths in and imagine your lungs expanding and contracting and all that kind of stuff. And I dig it. You're the only other person that has ever brought that up. That's rad. That is really cool. So that's a form of a hypnotic state. I take it, right?
100%. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. On Huberman's had I can't think of his name right now. David Spiegel, I want to say is his name. He's also a Stanford professor, but he also is a medical doctor trained, and he does hypnotherapy, and he does it in like a medical setting, and he trains a lot of people. Him and his dad were like the largest proponents of using hypnotherapy as a therapeutic intervention, both in medical settings and then also psychological interventions as well. Because if you're stressed out, it's really hard to do anything that's going to be effective. And so to be able to get into that, like shift into that state where your parasympathetic nervous system is activated and you're primarily in that one, you can do a lot more work a lot more effectively. Whether that's creative thinking or whether that's creating less tension in your body, lowering your blood pressure so you don't bleed as much when you're having a surgical operation. Like there is so many things that he talks about that he uses the therapeutic intervention of hypnosis in that state, that trance state, to be effective. It's wild to listen to him talk about it. But to use that in a therapeutic setting where we're talking about subconscious beliefs and the performance anxiety and like anxiousness and fears and phobias, there's a lot to be done with it, and it's pretty powerful. But the cool part is it's like a state you can trigger in yourself. It's right there in you at all times. So you can access it no matter where you are, who you're with, or what you're doing. And you don't always have to go parasympathetic and zoned out. You can actually be like active and tuned and be in a flow state. So it's not some nice flexibility if you're trying to perform or you're trying to recover from the performance. It's kind of cool that way.
I think that's an important thing to hit on too, is the flow state. Some people may know what I think. Someone that's trying to like go do more things, they might get the flow state, but some may not understand what a flow state is. I can let you explain it. I know what it is from being a musician,
Yeah.
and just when you're in the moment, nothing else matters. Kind of like what you were talking about earlier on the beginning of the podcast of okay, it took him an hour. He's going up. He's getting in that, like he's envisioning. He's getting in the flow state. But once you're like zoned in and you're like kind of tunnel visioned
Yeah.
and you're in the moment and you are here and it's like you've done so much thinking and you're in that flow state. That's kind of my explanation of it. There's times I'm playing music and there can be hundreds of people, but I'm just in that moment. It's the funnest song to play. The crowd's cheering, and sometimes you don't even hear the crowd, but you're
Yeah.
just in like this trance of like you're just in the moment and you never forget it. That's a flow state. Some may have never been there,
Yeah.
but how do you explain it?
Yeah. So
The
I think
more
some,
professional way, I guess.
no, I think you got it right. The research originally, they had a bunch of participants, and they were athletes and performance people, and they would send them like, now today, if you were to do the research again, it would be like a text message, right? But they would call them and be like, hey, what's your state like right now? Right? Or they would have them like, hey, at 4 o'clock, an alarm would go off, and you'd pull out your little sheet and write down what type of state you're in. And so the research that they did out of Claremont, so Southern California local based flow state research is where it all came out of for the last 30 years. They found out that the flow state is where you like lose sense of time. Time no longer has meaning. So if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that time. And you wouldn't be stressed. There's no anxiety in that state. There's no boredom in that state. There's just presence and awareness of whatever the thing is that you're doing. And it feels like you know exactly what you need to do, but it's not boring. So it's not like, oh, I know I need to like do this routine task. It's, oh, can I do this thing? There has to be a little bit of a challenge, but not too much. There has to be enough to get you out of boredom, but not so much that it triggers anxiety. And so that state where you can just be there and time is lost and you're just lost in that task. And they've run studies on that for so long now that they have found that like the happiest people, generally subjective happiness scales, isn't how big their house is, how paid off the big house is, how nice their car is, what their boats look like, or how many hours they've spent on the boat even. It's how many minutes that they've actually spent in that flow state. The people that can count the most amount of time in that state tend to be the happiest subjective people in the world. So if you can get it for performing, amazing. If you can get it doing puzzles or video games, sure. That's why sometimes like video games are so addictive to people, is because it triggers a flow state for most people that get absorbed into them. But when people are reading a book, they're in that same flow state. That is a form of hypnosis. That is a trance state. So it's interesting,
Yeah.
It's an enjoyable experience to the point where it may be the factor for most people's subjective health and happiness.
Yeah. Because like I said, there's so many terms. The first time I heard that, it's like, okay, what's this term?
Right.
But then, this was years ago. But
Yeah.
then there were moments I'm like, man, I just did something. I was so zoned in, and I think it's so great for us to be in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that gets lost, man. Yesterday happened. Tomorrow ain't here. We got stuff to get done. I get it, right?
Yeah.
But we're here now. The only moment that truly matters is like what we're doing right now. I don't know what's going to happen in an hour. More than likely, is everything going to be fine? Of course, right?
Sure.
But we really, truly don't know. And getting in those states, I think when you're maybe having self-doubt or feeling a little down or something like that, it's like, don't forget that. Don't forget those flow states. Don't forget those moments of happiness of like, man, that was a great moment. That was a great moment. Because maybe that's your thing to get you out, reconnecting with that moment and being like, no, it's possible. It's possible. But I know we've been talking for a bit here. There's one more thing I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
We kind of hit on it a little bit, but why would hypnotherapy help like a first responder? Like how could it? Like, I know we talked about a ton of stuff, but like to kind of wrap it up, why should it help them if they're already like a lot of firemen? We're pretty on edge. We are. We're really not the most present people. So there's some I see, man. I'm like, you're doing great. Like I wish I was like that. That wasn't me. I was very disconnected, like not present. So why would it help them as a first responder in particular? I get like the athletes and, maybe the CEOs and other high achievers, but like as far as a fireman that, you're seeing traumatic things all the time, you're not getting sleep, you're maybe disconnected because your sleep schedule is so off. Like, how could it truly benefit them? And why should they even think about it? Like, just to give them some hope or maybe just some internal confidence of like, yeah, maybe I'll look a little bit more into this.
Yeah, so hypnotherapy for first responders specifically, right?
Yeah.
If you're always in a stressed out state and it takes you, like it did me, 10 miles to feel relaxed, we're in danger because there's going to be a cost between being able to perform and do your job, right? Yeah, you need to be physically fit to be able to perform the duties and the tasks, and like that PT training is like a big part of it. But if you have to do that to try to get the endorphins, to get a release, to feel something other than that anxiousness that comes from the stress of the performance, we're in trouble because there's diminishing returns. So the idea with hypnotherapy is like, can we get you to be able to access a parasympathetic state where you can actually turn off and get restorative? Because being in that state itself is restorative. And can you learn how to do that in the shortest amount of time possible? Okay, great. And now that you're there in that state, can we now bring up some of those distressing experiences you've gone through and stay in that state? Because the next time you're thinking about those distressing experiences you've been through, they're less distressing. The soundtrack, the lighting, that memory and memory reconsolidation changes. So the next time you're out and you're daydreaming and that thought comes up, it's not overwhelming. It doesn't trigger you into that parasympathetic or into that sympathetic state. It doesn't create anxiety. It doesn't create stress. To some degree, right? Like it's not all or nothing. But the more time you can spend recovery, the better it is to be you. And then the other part about that is that flow state. Can it make it easier for you to get into there so where you can perform when you need to perform? And then can you switch out of that so when you need to recover, you can recover? Or are we stuck always in on and never able to turn that off switch? Is that your off switch broken? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
We're in trouble. That's dangerous. Like that's dangerous for everybody, but it's also going to eventually affect your ability to perform. It's going to compromise. Usually it's going to show up as like wear and tear in your body, tendonitis, tendinopathy, back pain, spasms, muscle stuff. It's going to show up in its own, because you're still operating physically, even though you're not there restored. And so that's usually what shows up first for a lot of people that are first responders. So if you're having a bunch of like aches and pains, muscle skeletal issues, that is usually a sign that like your sleep is crap, but you're also always in a sympathetic state and you're not able to turn that off switch into a restorative one. And you just don't know how to do it because you haven't trained it for so long that even when you're trying to do it, you're not. And I think that's the problem. So if someone wants to get their heart rate variability checked, that would probably be a nice indicator. If they got low back pain or knee pain or elbow pain or shoulder pain or neck pain or they're getting migraines, that's another indicator that something's going on, that they've been stuck in on for too long. And hypnotherapy is the idea is being able to train that off really quickly so you can take it with you when you need it.
Yeah. Shane, we talk about the Whoop strap. I don't have one, but he has the Whoop strap. He's very data driven as well. Yeah. And he does his heart rate variability as well. The sleep and all that kind of stuff. And that's just another tool, like you were saying, to get one of those to see where you're at, because it will give you gauges to, hopefully make some changes if you need to or whatever. But
yeah, if you're that left brain person where you got to see the data to believe, seeing is believing, like if you have a bio like wearable, you can see the data. You can see like, oh, I took 6 long, slow, deep breaths and my heart rate went from 160 to 140. I took another 6, it went down to 80. I took another 6, it went down to like 40. Like, cool, you saw it. It's real now for you, right? Like, if you need the data, great. I love those wearables because you can actually see the interventions on them. I've seen people where they actually use not breath work, but some of the somatic stuff we're talking about to lower their response of insulin. So they're wearing the like constant glucose monitors and they're actually seeing the change in that spike, which is really interesting. And then they're seeing it in heart rate. They're seeing it in heart rate variability. It's really cool to be able to see that feedback because if you have feedback, you can make smarter, more specific decisions about things.
And I feel like it's easier to believe because you see it. You're like, you can't deny. Oh, yeah, it went from this to that. I can't doubt that.
I mean, you can, but like there's data.
Yeah,
so
true.
like, yeah.
Yeah, true that. You can always doubt it, right? But Because
You'd
like
be
I
like,
just
oh,
started doing, yeah,
yeah.
I just started doing walks. I mean,
Mm,
I walk quite a bit, but
mm,
some buddies I work with up at the college, like after lunch, they're like, hey man, let's take like a 20 or 30-minute walk, and I'm like, okay. They're like, let's take our sugar before and after because it
sure.
helps regulate your
Yeah.
insulin and whatnot. And so yeah, I've been walking like at dinner time. I really do notice like it helps with my sleep. I'll take like a little mile walk. Takes me, I don't know, 25 minutes or whatever,
Yep.
it's not timed.
Yep.
But I come back, it's like 25, 30 minutes, whatever. I'll take a little cruise, come back. But there's times I'm like, man, that digestion ain't that great. But then I go for like a little walk and I can feel when I come back, I'm like, no, it's actually better. And I sleep better. And so it's like those little things. It's not on my Whoop strap or on a watch or on something else, but it's like your body will tell you,
Yep.
right? I like data as well. I do. I like data as well. I'm not like crazy data driven because if I feel it, I'm like, okay, it obviously worked,
Yep.
right? But seeing data is like another, yep, it just confirmed what you were thinking. So you're doing the right thing,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Um, but yeah, man. I'm gonna go back and listen to this and see if there's any other points. But yeah, is there anything else? How can we find you? Is there anything else that you want to hit on that can maybe help some of the people listening, or maybe some of the clients that I'm sure that you're going to show the podcast to? What are maybe some other little nuggets that can maybe help high stress situations or something?
Yeah. I think the message I always want to make sure people understand, or ideas they think about, right, is that success, performance, all of that is built through your well-being, not at its expense. And I think we often have been trained, in our culture that like anything, you sacrifice yourself, your health, your wealth, your relationships to reach that level of success. And I think we are like indoctrinated to believe that. In the short term, it will work for sure, but it's not sustainable and it comes at a great cost because it does cost your health and your relationships, cost the longevity of your career. And I think if we all passed away at 35, we wouldn't be talking about it. But if we're living to 98 now and beyond, like it's a big deal. And so
Yeah.
sustainable success is built through your well-being. So whatever that looks like for you, however you can support it, in any way, shape, or form, whatever that means, do it, because that's what sustainable success comes through, is increasing your well-being. So if that happens to be hypnotherapy and doing some work with me, great. If that happens to be going and working with a therapist, yes. If that happens to be going and like doing some of the breath work we talked about, I don't. If it happens to reading a book, I don't. It does not. Whatever you need to do to be okay, go do it. Right. That's the important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we totally align on that. And that's why we do this, right? It's like never did I think I'd be having a conversation with someone that does hypnotherapy, right? But
I
it's
never thought
like
I'd be a hypnotherapist. So there you go.
yeah, right. It's like, but life is a journey, man.
Yeah.
And you learn different things and you take what works for you at that moment. And you're like, hey, man, this can help people. I'm going to go help some people. And I
Absolutely.
think having an open mind and, if it's not for you, it's not for you, right? We're not trying to put you into a place of like, you got to go do this or got to go do that. But just think about it. Maybe there's a moment where you're good right now. You actually are good. But there's going to be a time, we all have our moments or times or whatever you want to call it, to where you're going to need some help. And the purpose of these podcasts is to where now, hey, there's the SGB, there's hypnotherapy, there's therapy, there's these other kinds of things that we can try. And you
Yep.
can listen to these episodes and be like, you know what, that does not fit well with me. But you
Right.
know what, that conversation with Garrett, I just liked his vibe. I'm going to just reach out to him, right? Some people may not like, they don't like the way you talk. They don't like the way I talk. Okay, go do something else.
Sure.
I don't know. But
Yeah.
the purpose is, here's some helpful tips, hopefully, and some well-guided information that could help you, the listener, all of us too, because we're all doing the work. Just
Yep.
because I do a podcast doesn't mean I don't do it. Like, doesn't mean
Right.
like, oh, you're this girl. It's like, no, I'm doing the stuff we talk about. I'm gonna start doing this little hip thing, dude, that you're talking about, right?
Yep.
And just trying stuff out because you deserve it for yourself, and you deserve your best life. And that sounds so cliche. I feel like you deserve the best life, but it's like you truly do. we don't know how long we're going to be here.
Yeah.
Like I said, the world's going to go on with or without us. But it's like when you're here, like you should be happy. Sometimes I don't know, maybe you hear this, but do you hear sometimes people say, well, happiness is just, we're not meant to be happy. Do you ever hear that?
Yeah, definitely. And happiness is a weird term because, like, what do you mean by that? Does that mean like blissed out state? Like, does that mean like 2 beers and like a joint? Like, I don't know. What do you, but this idea of like fulfillment and like well-being
Yeah.
and like enjoyment and contentment and like appreciation and meaning, that's the opposite of cynicism. So when people say like we're not meant to be happy, I'm like, that sounds like nihilistic or a little bit of cynicism in there, which is one of the leading factors of like diagnosing someone with burnout. It's like, if you're feeling that, you've been in that hole for a very long time. That's and performing. Not that like it's costing you performance. You're performing and you're still in that hole. That's part of why it feels like no, happiness isn't a thing. Nah.
Yep. But you hit the nail on the head. That term is so, I feel like, overplayed too, but it's true. You could perform and just not be happy and have no connections, but you're still performing, doing the thing, and then you're still just not even living your life. You're just here. Like you're just that's no way to live. Like you deserve to enjoy life. You know, we all deserve to. If I enjoy these conversations, I would have never enjoyed this conversation 5 years ago. It would have just been a thing for me to just check the box, get done. It's part of the job, right? It's something to do. It's something to help somebody.
Yep.
But I'm here. I'm like, I enjoy this. Meeting new people. We're helping people as we do it. And, my whole mindset has changed on that, right? Because I used to perform, but I was never here actually liking what I'm doing. It was just to get it done, right?
Yep.
Just get it done. No, man, I truly appreciate you coming on here and reaching out, Garrett. It's been a cool conversation. Sometimes we never know how these things are going to go. And anyone that listens to us knows we purposely do not have a so-called like has to go one certain way. We try to keep it an open conversation and a flow. Shane and I always say, man, if they want to turn it off, let them turn it off. We don't care. If they want to listen, they'll listen.
Sure. Right.
But where can we reach you? Do you have like a LinkedIn, Instagram, a YouTube, or your locations? You said Irvine and Long Beach. I will also put all of the stuff in the description in the podcast episode. So all the links you're going to talk about, people will have the hyperlinks to them as well.
Sweet.
But where are some places people can reach you at, like your email as well?
Yeah, so they can email me at Garrett at Gnosis Therapy, and it's Garrett Wood. But Garrett at Gnosis Therapy. If they're on LinkedIn, it would be Gnosis Therapy. If they're on Instagram, it would be Gnosis Therapy. And if they're on the World Wide Web, it would be www.gnosistherapy.com. And when I say Gnosis Therapy, it's Gnosis. The G is silent. So if you want to remember it as Gnosis Therapy, that might stick easier for people. But yeah. When you say it in public, it's Gnosis. When you're typing it in, it's Gnosis. So, yeah.
I made that mistake, man. You just like corrected me before this. You're like, it's Gnosis, bro. I'm like, okay, my bad.
Yeah. It's a Greek word that means like the experience of knowing or believing something is true of yourself. So it's that, that Red Bull guy, when he was able to make that jump all the way up and know he was going to land it and could see it in that moment and not be stressed and be in that flow state. That is a state of knowing in that. So that's kind of what I'm trying to help people experience. Yep.
Yeah. Can you repeat that again? That was really nice. What it means again, so people can hear it again. I want to hear it again.
Yeah, the state of like knowing, believing, feeling it to be true inside of yourself.
Yeah. Got it. Cool. Well, you guys can reach me at epadgettcoaching@gmail.com. Shane's not here on this podcast, but you can reach him at RIC firecaptain@gmail.com. And thank you for this podcast, Garrett. And reach out to us, anyone that wants to come on. And we'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Eric. Appreciate being
here.
here.
You got it, man. Yeah, bye.